Surah Al-Zumar. And each one of them talks about, my goal here, I know this may sound ambitious, but my goal is that inshallah not only do we read Surat Al-Ahzab and do the tafsir of that, but we continue the surahs. And I have the opportunity inshallah to show you how each surah is looking at it differently. Surat Al-Ahzab, for example, will focus on the concept of submission and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in difficult situations. Surah Al-Ahzab only talks about situations that are extremely difficult, whether they are financially difficult, socially difficult, personally difficult, or militarily difficult. It talks about when you submit to Allah, when you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the worst possible time, when it's least likely of you to do so, when you feel like this is the hardest moment I've ever been in my life, or you're asked to do something that is extremely awkward for you, that makes you feel, it doesn't make you feel comfortable even doing it. Surah Al-Ahzab focuses on that, and you'll see there's 5-6 stories in Surah Al-Ahzab. Each one of them is more difficult than the one before. Like every time we read one, say, oh, that is the pinnacle of difficulty, and then we move to another one and understand, oh, this is a completely different angle of difficulty. Surah Al-Saba talks about submission, talks about obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the framework of nations. It looks at it from a civilization perspective. It studies how different nations, if they obey and if they don't obey, what happens to them short term and long term. How obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how submission to Allah and to the ethical code that He brought will be the reason why civilizations will either continue or will collapse. And then so on and so forth. In Surah Fatir and Yasin and Safat and Sad, each one has a very unique twist, or it looks at the concept of submission, of ta'ah, of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His order in a different way. And how that manifests itself, meaning what will it look like? And then what will be the consequences of actually doing it? And that kind of brings everything into perspective regarding that concept. So that's the cluster that I chose to begin with. Only reason I did it is because last time when I asked for names, I got 12 different surahs. Like there weren't 2 people who said the same name. If I had 2 people who said the same name, I probably would have went with the surah. But everyone said something different. Like, all right, then I'll just choose something that no one thought of at all. Just as long as we're open, as long as the concept is you want to know the Quran, then let's just take something. Surah Al-Ahzab is a surah that is rarely explained. I'm not sure if you've heard it, I've done tafsir for it before. It's rarely explained, and so is Saba. And so these are recited surahs sometimes, like Yasin, you recite it a lot, but I'm not sure if you ever listened to a tafsir of it, which actually kind of kills the purpose. Right? Yeah, reading a surah a lot and then not really understanding what the point of it is and what it's trying to tell you kind of kills the whole vibe of why you would read it in the first place. So the point here is we go through surahs that are sometimes underrated in terms of tafsir and explanation, and at the same time within them there are surahs that are very, very famous yet not very well explored in terms of what the ideas that they contain are. All right, so that's the kind of that's the introduction. I will repeat this a number of times in the next upcoming weeks, so that you understand these clusters, this cluster of surahs, what their point is, what they're looking at, and then maybe if you're interested to read on your own, do your own readings, and maybe do your own contemplation and reflection upon the surahs, and maybe see things that I failed to bring up or failed to see. You'll find Surah Al-Ahzab to be a very, very interesting surah, very rich surah, has stories that are difficult. Some of these stories you've heard, some of them you haven't heard before. And getting the chance to actually talk about them and explain them will be something, inshallah, interesting for everyone in terms of seeing how Surah Al-Ahzab talks about submission, talks about ta'ah, talks about obedience, accepting the will and the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how that manifests itself in the most difficult of times, and what the consequences are when you do so, when it's really hard. And I think this is a good surah for maybe the times that we're going through. Maybe it's a good surah for us to kind of understand in terms of what happens in life in general. Sometimes in life you'll be put in a situation where it's very hard. It's very hard to hold on. You look. That's when people usually go shop, fatwa shopping. It's usually at that point when you're like, I need something. I can't do this. This is too hard. So you look for some way out of the situation that you are in, or it's that time of your life where you look back and I wasn't focused during that time, or I made mistakes, or you feel bad about it. And it's usually the times that are very difficult, where you're not capable for whatever reason to hold on to the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the proper way of doing things, and the only reason is it was just too hard. It was just too difficult. You were just going through a time where the scales kind of start rocking, and it started what was pulling you in the opposite way was heavier than your sense of haqq and sense of righteousness and followship of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Surah Al-Ahzab will basically almost destroy any argument you have in your mind or the nafs will give you regarding these type of examples. Why? Because it will show you a number of situations, and you'll be asking yourself, which is more difficult? which is harder. And it's not all the same type of hard. I know we're used to, when we hear the word hard, we always think poverty or pain. And you're always thinking either no money or a lot of pain. And that is obviously a big part of difficulties, but there are other types of difficulties. There are social difficulties, there are there's reputations, there's a lot of things that will also be very difficult. And Surat Al-Ahzab takes them one by one. So we'll start inshallah with the beginning of the surah. It's page 418 in the Madani Nuskha. I'm not sure what number the surah is, to be honest. I think it's 33. So if you're using a phone, it's surah number 33, and the page number is 418. We'll start inshallah from the beginning of it. Surat Al-Ahzab is a Madani surah. Obviously, it's the beginning of a big cluster of 7 surahs in the Quran that have similar concepts and similar themes. Talk about things in a very from different angles. They're very deep. Surat Al-Ahzab was revealed a number of months or after the actual battle itself. So Surat Al-Ahzab is called Al-Ahzab, and there's a battle in the 5th year of his hijrah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is called the Battle of Ahzab, or the Battle of Khandaq. It's the same thing. And this surah was revealed almost right after that. Not all together, however. Meaning the first couple of pages were revealed within the first couple of weeks after Al-Ahzab, and then the other ayat were kind of revealed slowly within the next few years. So Surah Al-Ahzab, one of the surahs that were revealed in Medina, but in a prolonged manner. Starting in year number 5, it kind of took at least 2 or 3 years until the whole surah kind of was put together, regarding different situations that happened and different circumstances that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba went through. Alright, so we'll begin inshallah from the beginning of the surah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها النبي اتق الله ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين إن الله كان عليما حكيما واتبع ما يوحى إليك من ربك إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. So this is the introduction of the surah, and it's an introduction of the whole cluster of surahs that are going to come later on as we go along, surah after the other. Now, it starts with Ya Ayyuha, right? And that is usually the marker of a Madani surah, with the few exceptions of Ya Ayyuha al-Muddathir and Ya Ayyuha al-Muzammil that are very specific to the beginning of the da'wah when the Prophet ﷺ actually came down the ghar. But generally speaking, whenever you see Ya Ayyuha, surah starting with that, you know that it's a Madani surah. As a rule of thumb, whenever you see Ya Ayyuha alladhina amanu, then you immediately make the judgment that this surah is a Madani surah. There is no Ya Ayyuha alladhina amanu in a Makki surah ever. It's just not there. Now, Ya Ayyuha Nabi, we may find it in a Makki surah, but more commonly you'll find it in a surah that was revealed in Medina, meaning after his hijrah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Medina, meaning after he did his hijrah. Even if the surah was revealed in Mecca during Umrah or during the Fath, it's still called a Madani surah. So let's say so when I say Madani, I mean any surah that's revealed after his migration to Medina, and Makki means before. So after he went to Medina, there were times where he was outside of Medina and Quran came, or he was during the time of conquering of Mecca, or when he did Umrah in Mecca, also Quran was revealed. But you don't call those a Makki surah. They're called Madani because it happened post the hijrah. So pre-immigration and post-immigration is basically how it all works for the nomenclature of the Quranic names of the surahs. So Makki and Madani is before hijrah and after hijrah. So Ya Ayyuhan Nabi, we have three or four actually. We have four commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right in a row to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which makes it very unique because it doesn't happen very often in the Quran. You don't find it like that. It's only similar maybe to a number of other few places like Surah Al-Muddathir maybe, or Surah Al-Muzammil. But here it starts out, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, number one, ittaqillah. So you can see, so ittaqillah, la tuti'i al-kafirin wal-munafiqin, right? Ittabi' and tawakkul. Four things in a row. These four things, when you put them together, it explains what the theme of the surahs to come are going to look like. It's talking about the followship. It's talking about the acceptance of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the act of submission. The deen that we follow is called Islam, and so was all the religions that the prophets before us brought. The concept of Islam has always been the same, and it's a very specific one. You don't hear the word used besides when you're talking about the faith itself. I mean, you rarely hear it as a command that people use amongst each other every day. I don't come up to you and ever say Aslim, or you don't tell me Aslim. And it's not something that we use in our we do call Islam, however, but we don't use that as something, even though the Quran says وَمَن يُسْلِمْ وَجْهَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَمُحْسِنٍ, etc. Why? But why is that? Well, because the word Islam is a very broad spectrum word. It's an umbrella word. It's a word that has under it a lot of different concepts. The concept of Islam, or submission, is when you finally come to the point where you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you achieve a level of belief in Him or certainty in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, specifically in what He sent, in the prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam Muhammad, and in the book that you have. When you come to that point, and that takes time, it doesn't happen immediately. You need to go through a number of different stages of faith until you come to that. But when you do, your next step has to be the concept of Islam. You have to say, well, as long as this is the truth or reality of who you are, if you are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way that I've understood you to be, and if Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is who He told us that he is, and if this book is what it is, which is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all that is left for me to do is to submit. Now, the word submission is used in a lot of different contexts that are very negative. I mean, we use it in a negative way when someone's doing it towards someone else. When there's submission of a nation to another, or one person to the other, and it's always looked at negatively. And it's true. The concept of submission being used in any other context but with God subhanahu wa ta'ala is a negative one. Alright? But that's not just for the word submission. There's a lot of other words that when you use them outside of the context of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a word that carries a high degree of negativity. I mean, you don't want to do that ever. But Islam being the biggest of all. Submission, what does it mean? It means, Wallahu a'lam, the four concepts that these three ayat brought forward in the form of commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet. Number one, he was told, ittaqillah. Right? Now, what is taqwa supposed to mean? Like, what are we supposed? We say it to each other a lot, and it's usually just a catchphrase. Ittaqillah, that's pretty much the end of it. You don't even know. He doesn't know what you mean. You don't know what you mean. Everyone's just saying the word. No one has any idea what that means, really. It's usually you're doing something wrong, so ittaqillah, and that's supposed to stop you, but no one really understands exactly what this is supposed to mean. So what the word taqwa means, it comes from the very simple root of waqa. And waqa means for you to protect yourself from something. For you to not only protect yourself, but to put a shield or to put a barrier between you and something that you fear is going to harm you. So when the word taqwa comes, the word taqwa is a derivative of the concept of the root itself of waqa, that brings forward a style of life that is based on taqwa. Meaning you are someone, I've ever heard this in Arabic, dirham wiqaya khayrun min qitar ilaj, right? So if you use, what it means is, if you use a penny to prevent something, it's better than spending whatever on, if you use a lot of money to prevent something, it's better than spending less money to fix something that already went wrong, right? So spend more in prevention and actually preventing a problem is better than actually dealing with it after it happens. So and that's what the word wiqaya means. So when the word taqwa is used, what we're trying to talk about is a style of life. It's a style of life that is based on prevention. It's based on the fact that you are preventing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being angry with you, or you're preventing the dissatisfaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever happening towards yourself. That's how you move. That's how you roll in life. You roll. The way that you live is a way of life that is based on wiqaya. based on you protecting yourself. How do you protect yourself? Well, through a number of different concepts. Meaning, but that's the idea here. It's a preventative system, and it's not very hard. Like the concept of taqwa is not impossible for you to achieve. Why? Because taqwa, it doesn't mean that everything you're doing to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What it means is that everything you are doing is not going to anger Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are you seeing the difference? It's a big difference between the two things. Because there are three statuses with the way you deal with Allah. Certain things will please Him, certain things are neutral, He doesn't care, and certain things will dissatisfy Him, He won't be happy with. So what's an example of something neutral? Whether you eat raspberry pie or cheesecake, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not, neither of them have haram in them, it doesn't really make a difference what you choose to eat today, or what color tie you end up wearing in the morning, or it doesn't matter how many sugars you put in your tea, or this doesn't make a difference. These are neutral stuff. And then there are things that satisfy Him, and there are things that don't satisfy Him. So where does taqwa work? Taqwa works on the part where you don't want to do something that dissatisfies Him, which allows you to say that I'll be doing one of the other two things, either something neutral or something that will please Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now if it was only something that pleases Him, that would make life literally impossible. Because whether you notice it or not, a good percentage of what you do during the day are neutral issues. Like maybe 50% of what you do in a day are things that are neutral. You don't necessarily get hasanat for it, but you don't necessarily get sayyat either. It's just, so if you weren't allowed to do that, if your system or your style of life was, no, I can't do that, I have to do something that only pleases Him, then that's asking a bit too much from the person, and you may not be able to achieve it. But the way that you roll is that I live a preventative life. The most important thing is that I don't fall under His ghadab subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I don't fall under His wrath. I'm not doing something that He told me not to do. I'm not disobeying Him. That is my focus. I'm making sure that I don't fall into something that He told me not to do. And that's what taqwa means. It doesn't happen just short term, but it's also a planning long term. وَتَزَوَّدُوا, right? فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. That's another ayah in the Quran. Now what does that come from? People from Yemen used to go to Hajj, and they wouldn't take any food with them. And they would say, tawakkalna ala Allah, and they would die on the way. Right? And they would say, or they would beg people to feed them and to make it and half of them would make and half of them would die on the way there. So the ayah, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, take food with you. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. A preventative way of thinking is the best zad. I mean, you plan your thing out. There's no taqwa in you walking out, going. It's 1,000-kilometer trip, and you're going to leave with nothing, and then so you just hope for things to happen. There's no aql in that. That's not taqwa. This is not taqwa. Taqwa, the concept of it, is a preventative system. You're preventing anything happening to you that is negative, that will harm you. Whether it's a short-term plan or a long-term plan in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what he means by Ya ayyuhan nabi ittaqillah. That's the first one. This is all under the umbrella of submission, by the way. وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. لَا تُطِعْ. So what does ta'a mean? Ta'a means obedience, or it also means don't follow, right? It also means do not be like, or do not become similar to someone. So there are three ways of looking at the word ta'a. وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a distinction of two types of people. There are the kafirin, the ones who refuse to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the outright disbelievers. They're on the other side of the rails. They've made that clear, and they're walking in a different direction than you are, and they're challenging your set of values altogether. And then there are the munafiqeen, who we don't really know where they are. It is not clear to us, are they standing on our side, are they in the middle, on the other side? They seem to be everywhere every day, and there's really no clarity on them. And that is, of course, the grayish area where we're not really sure what these people are. Some of them claim to be Muslim or practice certain parts of the deen, and some of them don't, so it's not clear. But there's a distinction of both types. I mean, it's not just Muslims and kafirs, there's also something in the middle called munafiqeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make none of us, inshallah, from the munafiqeen, but there are a group of people who are like that, and there are different levels of being munafiq. There's to the point where you inside hate the deen and you want to destroy it. That's the worst thing you can do as a munafiq. And then there's simple stuff, just like maybe not being honest or not coming on time or whatever. Something simple was also part of nifaq. So the Prophet ﷺ is told, وَلَا تُطِعْ, and then don't do ta'a for munafiqeen or kafirin or munafiqeen. So what does that mean? Do not follow them, do not obey them, or do not be like them. I think number three is the more is the one that is used in the Quran in other places. فَلَا تُطِعِ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ, for example. The idea here is do not be like them. Do not duplicate their behaviors or their ways of life. And it could also mean don't follow them. If they persuade you in doing something haram, if they try to pull you down the road that is not right, then don't obey them and don't follow them. So all three words could be used. I think the one that is more prominent in translation in this ayah or in this context is do not be like them. Meaning do not try and copy them. وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. You are different. The way of life that you have is different. Your values are different. Your mentality is different. Then you must not become like them or behave like them. That's the second one. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been always aliman, the all-knowing, hakima. Now remember, this is the first time in this halaqah ever we've had to read something like that. Correct? Ever. Because all the surahs that we've read so far are Makki. Very rarely do you find in a Makki surah a fawasil. These are called fawasil, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wallahu Ghafurur Rahim, or wa kana Allahu inna Allah kana, where he talks about, he uses a name or two names of his beautiful name subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring forward a point. Now why do these exist in the end of the Quran? Well, for a number of reasons. Well, sometimes they make sure that you understand the idea of the ayah itself, meaning the ayah is talking about something that may be a bit ambiguous or it's not clarified, and then the ayah, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end will make it very clear to you what he's talking about. So and the names are different. There are no two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names used in the Quran that had the exact identical meaning. Every name had a different meaning. So Aliman, meaning the all-knowing, is the most generic name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that regards knowledge. Under it are a lot of other names. Fall under that umbrella name. There's a lot of other names like Khabira, like Sami'a, like Basira, like Latifa. All these names have but they're different. They have specific differences between. Alim is just the generic name, the all-knowing of everything without going into details. Hakima is the all-wise subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning when he told you ittaqillaha wa la tuti'il kafirina wal munafiqin, I'm telling you two things. Live a life that has a preventative system in it. Your system of life towards your akhirah, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be preventative. Prevent yourself from coming Yawm al-Qiyamah and then getting very disappointed. Prevent that from happening. Plan from now. Start planning today so that Yawm al-Qiyamah you're not standing there looking at your book wondering how you ended up here. Wondering why did I do all this? Yeah, this doesn't look good at all. What was I thinking? Well, prevent that from happening by making sure you plan it out properly from today, because it's coming. Ittaqillah, have a long-term plan where you're preventing anything that you don't want to happen, right? Number two, do not follow and do not be like those who have made it very clear to you that they're either against your way of life or they are not sure about it. They're somewhere in the middle where they're not, because it has to be understood that there's a huge gray area between what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants and what he very much dislikes in the Quran. He dislikes things very heavily. Like رَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. The one who mistreats the orphan, the one who starves the needy and the hungry. This is the horrible zone. This is the zone that you probably don't meet very many people who are like that. It's very rare to meet people in that zone where they hate faith and they go out of their way to mistreat people who are in need, the weak people of the society. And then you have the really good paradigm. You have those who are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a spiritual level, and people who spend all their time trying to help other people. And then everyone else is somewhere in that gray area in the middle that the Quran doesn't really talk about too much. It gives them a name, it's nifaq, and then there's a lot of problems. Maybe we're in that gray area. Maybe one of us is closer to this side than to that side, but you're still in the gray area, so we don't really know what's going on for you. Like no one really knows what's going to happen for any of us Yawm al-Qiyamah. If you're swimming in that gray area, what you're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be somewhere on the paradigm of khair that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about, making sure you're not on the other side at least. So inna Allah kana aliman hakima. When he told you to do these two things, he knows what he is telling you to do, and he is the most wise when he told you to do these two things. So if it comes to your mind, well, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know how hard it is and what they're doing today, what we're being told to do? And yes, he does. Well, are you sure that doing this will bring me happiness and allow me to get there? Yes, we do, because he is the most wise subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it puts you at ease. Whenever you're aliman hakima, you know that what you're told was well thought, meaning it is studied from every angle, nothing is missing in it. Number two, you know that it will serve its purpose properly. And when you hear those two names, Alimun Hakim or Alim and Hakima, you know immediately that this is something you shouldn't be questioning, except it's going to work. Why? Because it comes from the All-Knowing and the All-Wise, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's the first two commands. The third command, وَاتَّبِعْ, right? مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. And then if you're not supposed to follow, yes?
Yeah, the way the surah has started, like, it makes you think that the Prophet did something wrong. Yeah, it's something basic than like for Kafirin in the mosque.
You think it's something basic?
For the Prophet.
See, well, everything is basic for everyone at some point. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, at many points in his life, didn't know almost anything that came to do with the deen, and then was educated through the Quran and through Jibreel, point by point. When you read something like that, well, there's a Madani surah, it's number 5, it's the 5th year, so it's 18 years into his prophecy, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just because they're basic ideas doesn't mean that they're not worth reiterating and repeating and explaining. And it's not just about using the wording itself, it's also when things are put together in one point. So the first 3 ayat come together as a group of ayats that carry within them 4 concepts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the Prophet ﷺ to keep his eyes on in terms of the way he's going to continue. Why? Because what's going to come in the surah is going to be very heavy, and what's coming in the next surahs are also going to be on the same level of heaviness. Carrying those 4 concepts with you will allow you to be able to practice them properly. That's one thing. Another thing is that when the Prophet ﷺ is commanded to do something, it's not just for him, it's for us as well. So what you're studying right now is something that he was commanded to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we're supposed to take as well. That's number 2. Number 3 is that it's really not that basic, to be honest. It's not لا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين is basic from a concept point of view, but from a practical point of view, sometimes it's not as clear. Meaning, if you're going into a situation where you are being peer pressured every day by people who are kafirin and munafiqeen, and you're slowly starting to lose concept, for someone to remind you, لا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين, is something that you definitely need. Now, and the same thing for taqwa. Now, the idea itself is clear to you, but you will go through different experiences in life where slowly that starts, your eyesight starts to shift. It's a slow shift. You just spend enough time with people who are thinking in a different way, and slowly you'll find yourself, your opinions are very different than they were maybe a year ago. You're not sure if they're right or wrong anymore, and the reason of that is because you're spending the peer pressure that you're going through, or what they're telling you, or the narrative that you're listening to is kind of making you question a lot of stuff. So for that to be brought back, and here's a number, keep these in mind. Now the Prophet ﷺ, why would he need that at the point of Surat AlAhzab? Well, that's what we're going to find. This surah is going to talk about extremely difficult situations, not just for the Muslims, but specifically for the Prophet ﷺ. And you're going to find every time we finish a story and move to the other one, you'll find that doing this was really hard. Making that decision, saying these words, acting like that, was something that was he would be very self-conscious about it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was told by others not to do it. He was sometimes advised by those who were supposed to be Muslims not to do it, because it wasn't, they weren't sure about it. Maybe, Ya Rasulullah, this is not the best choice. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to do it anyway. So he did it. And it was hard. And he took heat for it sometimes. And you'll see how the examples will. So the fact that these commands at the beginning of the surah are key, and they're fundamental to understanding the rest of the surah. Keep in your mind taqwa. Keep in your mind adam ta'at al-kafirin wal munafiqin. Keep in your mind that you are unique, that you will not follow. You'll not be pressured by other ideologies in terms of doing something that you may not agree with or may not be the best idea. Number 3, you will follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, and follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. I mean, it's not yes.
So if it's not clear who the munafiqeen are, how does it? And it says وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ, but if it's not clear who the munafiqeen are, then you don't know what's in their heart. How can you know? Okay, should I not be listening to these guys?
Sure. Well, you may not know the inner part of the munafiq, but you will know what is nifaq. There's a difference between what is judging a munafiq and actually judging something that is filled with nifaq. An example of that is pretty simple. Maybe today, within what's happening with the Quds coming back on the world agenda, now it's becoming a big deal again. There's a lot of people who are saying things that are filled with nifaq, filled with nifaq. If when you read it, when you listen to it, when you hear what's being said, it's clear to you that these words are very biased, are very much, there's an agenda behind it, there's a lot of nifaq in it. However, it doesn't mean that the person himself is a munafiq. We don't judge the person by calling him a munafiq, but what's being said is obviously nifaq. For the Prophet ﷺ, he knew the munafiqeen, so he could be told la tuṭi'il kafirina wal munafiqeen, because he knew who the munafiqeen were. He knew them one by one. Right? For us, it's more of judging what's being said. Right? It's more looking at what's being presented. That's one thing. Another thing is when we say the word munafiqeen, you see, in Islam you don't take your deen from someone who can explain it well but doesn't really practice it at all. Within the deen, it doesn't work like that. Like, you could be someone who studied every single book that has ever been written within Islamic history, but you don't pray or you don't really practice the deen. Your ability to actually give any ruling or talk about the deen in any form is very highly crippled. I mean, you're disabled basically in terms of talking about it. Why? Because you're not practicing. So when you're taking advice or you're taking leadership, it's not just the knowledge that you're looking for. You're also looking for the character, meaning it's something that has to be there as well. And that's been the tradition within Islamic history, and will continue to be that we don't take our deen from people who do not practice properly. Someone who's going to come and talk to us about issues in the Quran, ma bisalli, does not pray or does not fast or does not give, then this is something that is automatically almost a turn up. I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong, but you immediately lose the connection or the ability or the will to actually ever listen to him. Why? Because la tuṭi'il kafirina wal munafiqeen, he has made it clear within certain practices that he is a munafiq in the way that he is going by, about the deen itself. So for the Prophet, that's why he's called Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu. Right? That's why the beginning of the surah, Allah subhanahu is calling the Prophet ﷺ specifically because he knows who the munafiqeen are. Many of the Muslims didn't know the munafiqeen after that, but you still will know what nifaq is. So it's not the most difficult thing to weed out what nifaq is supposed to be. All right. وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, and follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. So first one is ethical. Ittaqillah, there's a lot of ethics in that. Second one is more of an identity command, meaning your uniqueness and the difference between you and between the munafiqeen and the kafirin has to be visible, it has to be clear. You cannot be like them, you cannot duplicate them, and you cannot follow them or obey their commands. The third one is, well, what do I follow? Whom do I obey? Then اتبع ما يوحى إليك من رب. Then you will follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. The second fasila of the surah. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been regarding what you do khabira. The word khabira, or the name khabira, means the one who knows, and this is regarding things that are not visible. This is something regarding things that cannot be seen. So whenever you find the name Khabira, any time in the Quran, then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about something that it's not seen. So I don't know your intentions, I don't know your feelings, I don't know your thoughts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's Alim, He knows about it, but a more specific name would be, for that specifically, would be Khabir. So إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا, when He uses that phrase specifically, He is saying that He knows what you do, and He knows the intentions, and He knows what's behind it. I mean, He knows why you're doing it, what the motivation for it is. So وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, and then follow and that kind of comes back to the question that I was asked a second ago regarding munafiqeen, right? So it kind of comes back to say that you're going to follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you do. He knows the details. He knows all the delicacies, all the delicate issues of what you do, meaning your motives, your intentions, and what you're hoping to achieve through what you are doing. And that takes you back to the concept of intentions and knowing why is it that we follow the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What pushes you or what compels you to open the Quran and try to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, then it has to be the intention of pleasing Him. Yes?
So why are we using inna to keep?
So whenever you see the word inna anywhere in the Quran, it's always indeed. So the way that I go by it in terms of translation is always say indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always known or knows or always will. Kana, meaning has always known or always will. Inna is always there for emphasis on the concept itself, or emphasizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge of something. And you'll find that like in and out of the Quran in many different places, depending on the context of how the surah kind of moves forward with. The fourth command, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, is the concept of tawakkul. And tawakkul is a perspective. what it is in its essence, like what tawakkul is, because it's a word that Arabs never used before Islam. The word wakala, it was there, it was random, it was very rarely used, and it was used usually regarding something you would do with your sheep or your camel, but it was not used as a concept that was going to show in behaviors. Then the word tawakkul was a phrase that the Quran coined and that the Prophet ﷺ spoke of, and it's a perspective. It's a way. It's how you view things. How you view life is through the lens of tawakkul ala Allah. Meaning, how you go by it is that everything you want to achieve, you work for with every ounce of ability that you have. You exhaust every single resource that you can possibly exhaust in terms of trying to get this done. If you're trying to graduate, then you are studying, you are seeking help from those who are years before you, you're asking, you need tutoring, you're spending as much time as you need, you're watching video, you're doing everything you need to do in order for you to graduate and achieve the marks that you want to achieve. That's one thing. As you do that, you know in your mind and in your heart that these are asbab, meaning these are means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to use, He obligates you to use. However, the results are in His hands. Whether you graduate or not, whether you actually achieve what you want or not, is totally and completely up to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. It really won't, you have to understand that at the end the results weren't something that He's going to hold you to. He's not holding you to the results, He's holding you to the effort that you put in terms of achieving it, and the knowledge that you had in your mind that was the reality. Meaning you knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who chooses whether this is going to happen or not is another thing you're going to be held to. The third part of it is acceptance. Meaning you accept whatever the result is. If it's good, then you accept it and you refer it to Him subhanahu, you attribute the fact that this happened to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it's not what you were looking for, you continue to work. Meaning you continue to do your job. You get up again and you try again. Or if maybe this proves as an endeavor that was not the best choice, maybe you change and you find something else. You don't lose hope. You don't object to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't wonder why He didn't give you what you want. You don't become an angry person who does not accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anymore. You continue to move forward with your life. This is what tawakkul is. And this is a perspective. And this is how we see the world. And this is how we go by it. This is the concept that we have. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. In no way is tawakkul, never has it been, nor will it ever be, an idea where it's dependence. It's not dependence, where I just sit back and wait for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to dish me out whatever it is He's going to dish me out. A lot of people this is the question I get a lot. Well, if I'm going to work, put my 100% into it, then why would I have tawakkul? Right? See, if you can answer that question properly in your mind, and then you've understood Islam, right? That's the key. That is like the secret ingredient. If you understand that, then khalas, now you understand the perspective of the deen. Understanding why is it that I have to try 100% and have tawakkul, that is what being a Muslim means. That's the whole point of being a Muslim, is that you know that at the end, whatever is going to happen is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He can shift it however He wants. Easily things can change. You could have done everything right 100%, you've taken everything, you've talked to all the right people, and now it's secure, it's in the bag, you know it's going to happen. Still, if He wants to change it subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll change it, and you have to know that. You have to be okay with that. Using tawakkul as our final frontier when we don't do our work. Meaning, tawakkul is the gun I take out when I haven't done anything. I didn't study at all, I'm going to fail tomorrow, but I have tawakkul. أنا توكلت على الله إن شاء الله. And then that's not how it works at all. Actually, if you didn't study, put it back in and just keep it there. Tawakkul is not what you're supposed. You never lose tawakkul, but you have to accept that I didn't do my job here. I didn't really put in my effort. Tawakkalt ala Allah, but I'm not hoping for a miracle. I'm not expecting Him to give me something that I did not deserve, that I did not work for. It's a very important way of looking at things. We have this miracle or this mystic thinking as Muslims, and we attribute it to the deen, and then we tell stories about it. We make up stories about people who didn't do their job at all, but they did tawakkul and they went there and it all worked out miraculously. And we say, and everyone, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, this is Allahu Akbar, this is a great story. No, there's a horrible story. Never tell that story. Like if you're lucky one day not to do your job and still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent you khayr, then be quiet. Sit down and make istighfar. For years you make istighfar because you were given a chance that most people are never given in life. Like you were he threw you a life-saving, that was a life-saving moment. He turned things around for you. You don't expect that to happen all the time, and you're not entitled to that in life. And that's not how things happen. Tawakkul, that's not what it means. Tawakkal Allah, it means that you've already put in your 100%. You already tried your best. Now, no one can do 100%, obviously. We can't do that, but we can try our best. We can do as much as we can, right? We're not slacking on the job. We do as much as we can, but then we know it's in His hands, and we're okay with whatever you give us, Ya Rabb. If it comes to us the way we want it, alhamdulillah. If it doesn't come the way we want it, alhamdulillah. And I get up again, I learn from my mistakes, and I become better, and I try it again next time. And next time, inshallah, it happens. And that's how you go through life. That's what tawakkal ala Allah means. Put your matters in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. And it's enough for you. Having Allah as your wakil, as the one you depend upon, that is enough for you. You don't need to depend upon anyone else. There's one more point here. See, the word tawakkul, what it really brought for Muslims at the beginning, what it really brought for Muslims, was a sense of integrity and dignity. It brought this sense of integrity. Why? Because if you have tawakkul, then there's really no reason for you to get on your knees and beg for anything. Then you should never ever break your integrity to get something. You do tawakkul. I've tried my best, I did my part, tawakkalt Allah, I move forward. I'm not going to break my own integrity for it. Why? Kafā billahi wakila. I put my hands in my issues in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will do with it what He wants. And that is a very important part. Whether we're talking about your provision, whatever we're talking about here regarding your life, you should never ever lose the integrity and the dignity that you have as a human being. And the reason that you shouldn't eat haram or do something that you shouldn't bring yourself down to do something, lower yourself to something like that, is because you have tawakkul. Because you've already put your matters in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why would I do something like that? The one who's taking care of my issues, the one who is overseeing all my affairs, is Allah. I don't need him or her or anyone. I have Him. What does He require of you in order for Him to oversee your affairs? Just do your job. Just do the best you can and know that it's in His hands at the end. That's the two things that He needs. Yes, it's just two conditions. Just do your best and know that it's in His hands. Third thing is acceptance. It's the aftermath of it. Meaning tawakkul is a long-term commitment. You commit to tawakkul from the beginning to the end. The last part of tawakkul is acceptance. Sometimes it's easy to accept because exactly what you wanted happened. You did tawakkul, it came to you, alhamdulillah, you accept. But sometimes it doesn't. Tawakkul means that you won't object, you won't lose your motivation, and you won't stop doing your job. You won't stop fulfilling your purpose. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. These were the first three ayat of Surat AlAhzab. When you study the surah, you will feel that, I'm not saying that they don't fit, but you'll feel that they're unique in terms of how the surah keeps on going and the issues that the surah talks about. You'll feel that these three ayat at the beginning are kind of just this introduction that is a bit disconnected from everything else, because it's introducing not only this surah but a number of surahs after it, keeping in mind that this is what submission is. Submission is the mix of an ethical status, of taqwa, of a preventative way of living, where you are continuously long-term, short-term planning to make sure that you don't fall in something that's haram, that you have a sense of identity where you will not follow or be similar to those who are clearly munafiqeen or clearly kafirin. That you will follow what has been revealed to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's book. You will follow the message and the way of life that He gave you, and that you will live a perspective of tawakkul. So He's giving you an ethical choice, He's giving you identity choice, He's giving you a tashri', meaning a way of life, and then He's giving you a perspective. These four things, if you put them all together, you have the concept of what submission is supposed to look like. If you put them all together, actually, you can just take these three ayat and you're good. You can go home, you can study them, you don't need anything, you don't need to add much to it. But then the examples come. And the surah enters all the examples of how this was going to be, how you're going to see how this is all going to manifest itself in different situations. You're going to see during the battle of Ahzab, you're going to see the aftermath of Ahzab, you're going to see the Prophet ﷺ with Zayd, you're going to see the Prophet ﷺ trying, when he's told to get married to Zaynab, you're going to see his certain commands that are given to his wives, given to the Muslim ladies. You're going to see that there's a lot of things here that are very, we'll even find difficulty talking about them. Like you'll even feel the tension just when I tell you the stories. Like even I tell you this is what happened, you'll feel like uncomfortable listening to the story. And then the Prophet ﷺ with the Muslims had to do 1, 2, and 3, and they did them. Why? Because I think the first 4 concepts of the surah were an important part of what was in their minds and in their hearts at the time when they were asked to do that. Do we have 10 minutes still? Okay, let's just read the 4th. I will just explain the first small part of it, inshallah, until it's 9. ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه وما جعل أزواجكم اللائي تظاهرون منهن أمهاتكم وما جعل أزواجكم اللائي تظاهرون منهن أمهاتكم وما جعل أدعياءكم أبناءكم وما جعل أدعياءكم أبناءكم ذلكم قولكم بأفواهكم والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل. First point, ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made for a man within his heart, within his interior, inside of him, 2 hearts. There have never been 2 hearts inside of one man. What does that mean? It's not a literal. He's not talking about anatomy here. That could we have 2 hearts, or going to be one, or does it have to be? This is a figure of speech, meaning you can't have 2 hearts. You're either someone who follows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're either someone who will follow the first 4 concepts of the surah within the first 3 ayat. You are committed to them, or you are not. There's no room for both. Either you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you follow Him, and this is the criteria that you hold yourself to, this is the reference you have, and this is whom you're trying to please, or it's something else. And there's no 2 hearts in it. You can't say, no, I have 1 heart for Allah and another heart for all the umur of the dunya, and I live like that. No, it's 1. It's not 2. Now, why is that? This is the only time you'll find this ayah in the Quran in that way. Because this is, as the surah is going to enter, talking about a number of issues that are very difficult for people to grasp and to follow and to actually stick to. Understand, it's either this or this. That's why in this surah, also in this surah, you'll find as we go along, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It's never been permissible for a mu'min or a mu'mina when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a command for them to have a choice. For them to say, yeah, I'll think about it. No, if you're a mu'min, the moment you hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to do it, you will do it. It could be easy, it could be difficult, you may like it, you may not like it. You're not going to like everything about the sharia. That's a fact. You can't like everything. Inshallah, one day you will, but it's impossible. Some parts of it are going to be hard. They're going to be difficult for you, like they're not your cup of tea. It's not what you were always hoping for. It's not the thing that makes your life the easiest at the moment when you're doing it. But you have to trust in Allah's hikmah. You have to understand Allah's alim. And you have to know that He's khabir. the 3 names that we had, you have to understand that this is what's going to happen anyway. And there's no room for 2 ways of life. It's either this or that. There's no 2 hearts in one man's chest. ما جعل الله, He did not make لرجل, for a man, min qalbayni, of 2 hearts fi jawfi, within his interior or inside his chest cavity. There's no 2 of them. It's one thing. Make your choice. And when you make your choice, then you don't have another, you can't go back again. And don't lie to yourself. So either my choices are based on the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's what He says, or it's something else. Making the mix isn't something that is possible. So what are the examples of that? وَمَا جَعَلَ أَزْوَاجَكُمْ, and He did not make your wives اللَّائِي تُظَاهِرُونَ مِنْهُنَّ أُمَّهَاتِكُم. There was a practice in Jahiliyyah right before Islam. It's a horrible practice. This was a practice that you could see that this was demonic. This was something that men thought of to really pin down women, like to make sure that whoever thought of this was a genius, and his point of this was making sure that women couldn't do anything. What he would come and say is, أَنْتِ عَلَيَّ كَظَهْرِ أُمِّي, you are to me like my mother. Now what that means is that he will no longer be her husband, but at the same time that's not really divorcing her. Right? And if she says, well, I don't want to be like your mother, then she gets to say, what, you think you're better than my mother? And she can't say that because it's going to look horrible. So she has to just live a life where she's neither married nor divorced. And that's just men oppressing. That is like one of the biggest examples of oppression that ever happened towards women. It went down in Arabia. It was called al-mudahara, where divorcing is one thing. You send her away, she gets married, she has a life, right? But no, I'm going to do something. This is thought through well. I'm going to say that you're to me like my mother is. And you can't say that you're better than my mother, but you don't like being like, so I'm telling you like you're to me like my mother, but that means of course we're no longer going to have any relations. So now she's not really married and she's not really divorced and she can't say anything about it, because if he says anything about it, socially she'll be looked down and frowned down upon. Aib, how could you not like, he called you something similar to his mother, how dare you? So now she's sitting there, she has nowhere to go. It's a dead, the 3 doors are all closed in her face, and she's going to spend the rest of her life not really married, not actually divorced, and can't get out of it. Men, that's what they do. Do it well. فجاء الإسلام فحرمه. This is something that Islam ended. This is actually haram to do, and there's a punishment to men who actually do it. And this is the first. وَمَا جَعَلَ أَزْوَاجَكُمْ. He did not make the wives whom you do اللَّائِي تُظَاهِرُونَ مِنْهُنَّ, the ones that you perform mudahara towards and you say that they're unlawful for you to have relations with. أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ. They're not your mothers. Just because you said you're to me like my, doesn't mean that she's your mother. She is not your mother, she's your wife. And that doesn't, and of course this was something that was this was a very social, this is a very prickly issue in society. I mean, when Islam came and said this is no longer acceptable, it's a problem. It was a problem for everyone. But many people in Arabia didn't like it, and they would come to the Prophet ﷺ and argue with him, and why is this? Why are you taking this away? What, right? And you look at it. This happened to all prophets. Salih alayhi salam, they would come, Ya Salih, qad kunta fina marjuwan qabla hadha. We used to like you, Ya Salih, before this. Why, Salih? Why bring all these? We want to make you our leader, and we want to, you feel like I was going to become a leader, and now I have to. Maybe can I change this a bit so I can still be on their good sides, or do I have to stick to it? No, ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه. No, you don't have 2 hearts. It's either this. It's either you do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do, or you do what people want you to do. Make your choice. If you make the choice of Allah, then He did not make the wives whom you perform mudahara towards your mothers. That's haram. Take that away. Number 2, وَمَا جَعَلَ أَدْعِيَاءَكُمْ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ. And the sons whom you bring into your house to raise that aren't actually yours, they're not your sons. Meaning they don't carry your name. This is something we're going to have to talk about a bit more in detail next time, because I have to go through a few issues regarding yatim and kafalat yatim, because as an ummah, for some reason we misunderstood this and we're making a lot of mistakes. But the idea here is that if you adopt a child, then this child is not your son. He will call you Baba and Father. You can call him my son, but he's still known. He is known who he is. His lineage is still preserved, and it's known if he's actually your biological kid or not. And that has to be something that is explained and is clear. Why? Because it's a form of lying. And it's a form of messing up genealogy, which is something that needs to be preserved. وَمَا جَعَلَ أَدْعِيَاءَكُمْ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ ذَلِكُمْ قَوْلُكُمْ بِأَفْوَاهِكُمْ. That is, however, what you say with your mouths, meaning you go around saying these things. وَاللَّهُ يَقُولُ الْحَقِّ. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the truth. وَهُوَ يَهْدِي السَّبِيلِ. And He guides you to the straight path. As-sabil is the path. Right now, why is it not called here the mustaqim? Because it's known. As-sabil is something is referred to many times before, and He guides you the path that if you take, then you will find. Well, you may say, well, why, Ya Rabb? I don't understand this, and this is hard, and it's difficult when you bring a child into your house and you have to explain to them when they're 5 or 6 years old that they're not really your kid and that they were adopted and whatnot. These are difficult things. Isn't that a difficult situation? Yeah, isn't that a very difficult situation? It's a very difficult situation. If you inshallah, we'll talk about that in more detail next time. But if you bring a child, inshallah we all do, and you try to do kafalat yatim, you bring a 5 or 6 year old into your house, or maybe an infant, and then that age of 5 or 6, when they come to the age of reason, you need to take time and explain to them that I'm not your biological mother and father. That is one of the most difficult conversations you'll ever have with a human being on the planet. Like, it'll be very, very difficult to do. Why do we have to do it? That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Wallahu yaqulu al-haqq wa huwa yahdi as-sabil. He says what is right. He tells righteousness, and He guides you the path. You say what you want. ذَلِكُمْ قَوْلُكُمْ بِأَفْوَاهِكُمْ. You say what you want to say. That's your choice. You want to say what you want to say? Fine. But this is what Allah says. And He says the truth, and He guides the path, and you make your choice of what you're going to do here. However, مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِرَجُلٍ مِنْ قَلْبَيْنِ فِي جَوْفِهِ. We'll come back to this every couple of minutes. Every time we read a story, look, there's no room for 2 things. It's either His way or your way, or others. It's either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your heart is for Him, or it's for someone else. And even no matter how difficult the issues come up, we still have to follow Him. The 2 first examples that were given in these ayah, in a summarized manner, I mean, we're going to have more detail in the surah as we go along, but they were quickly summarized as mudahara and al-kafalat al-yatim, or da'ayat al-abna, regarding saying that to your wife, putting her in a situation where she's no longer your wife, nor is she divorced, nor she can get out of it, and calling a child that is not actually your biological son, giving him your name and saying that he's my biological, and basically lying. right? So both of them were social issues that Arabs carried very highly and didn't like, that the Prophet ﷺ came and changed it. They didn't like it. Zayd was called Zayd ibn Muhammad for a while, for at least 10 years. And then he was told, no, his name is Zayd ibn Haritha, and he has know his name. He lived in the house of the Prophet ﷺ, however, he didn't. Now, whether this is something that we relate to today immediately or not, maybe not. There are things that we will relate to in the surah as we go along. But these are two examples of stuff that were very difficult for the Arabs to accept, but most of them did, or at least the Muslims of them did. We will continue, inshallah, reciting the surah and going more detail next time. Subhanallah bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi jazakumullahu khairan wa